Ever notice how the second you say renting might be smarter, people react like you just insulted their family? Because homeownership has become this sacred cow in personal finance. And yeah, owning a home can be a great move, but the problem is, most people don't actually run the math, they run the vibe. They buy because it feels like the adult thing, because someone told them rent is throwing money away, because they're terrified of missing out, or because they want the flex. And then they quietly get crushed by costs they never budgeted for, opportunity costs they never considered, and a timeline that doesn't match their life. So in this video, I'm going to show you the math that homeowners hate. Not because it's wrong, but because it proves renting can be the better financial decision in way more situations than people want to admit. Hi, my name is Matt, and in this video we will be talking about why renting can be better than buying a house. If you like personal finance that's honest, practical, and actually based on numbers, hit subscribe, because I post videos that help you stop making expensive normal person mistakes. Let's start with the biggest lie that traps people. Rent is throwing money away. That line sounds smart, it feels smart, it repeats well at family parties, but it's incomplete. Because buying a house doesn't mean every dollar you pay turns into wealth. A huge chunk of what homeowners pay is also thrown away. It just gets called different names so people feel better about it. When you rent, you pay for housing and the cost is mostly predictable. When you buy, you pay for housing, plus you pay for a bunch of extra stuff people pretend doesn't exist. And you take on a concentrated financial risk. So the real question isn't renting versus buying. The real question is, which one costs less for the lifestyle you want over the time you'll realistically stay there while allowing you to build wealth in the background? That's it. And once you frame it like that, renting starts winning a lot more often. Here's the part homeowners hate: the unrecoverable costs. When you rent, your unrecoverable cost is obvious. It's rent. When you own, your unrecoverable costs are hidden inside a big monthly payment, so people assume it's all going to equity. It's not. Early in a mortgage, the payment is mostly interest, not principal. So if your payment is, say, $2,800 a month, it might feel like you're building equity. But the math might be $2,200 of interest and only $600 of principal. That means most of your payment is a fee for borrowing money. Then you've got property taxes. That money is gone every year, forever. Then homeowners insurance, also gone. Then maintenance and repairs, roofs, HVAC, water heaters, plumbing surprises, appliance deaths, landscaping, pest control. People love to ignore this because it's not monthly, it's random, it's painful, and it ruins the homeownership builds wealth narrative. Then depending on where you live, you might have HOA fees. Sometimes you're paying hundreds per month for rules and vibes. And we haven't even talked about the transaction costs. Closing costs when you buy, loan fees, title, escrow, inspections, appraisals, and selling costs when you leave. Realtor commissions, staging, fixes, concession. These are the costs that matter because they're the money you do not get back. So if someone tells you rent is throwing money away, the honest answer is cool. So is interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and transaction fees. The only difference is homeowners pretend those don't count. Now let's do the math with a simple real-world example. I'm using round numbers so the logic is clear. Imagine you're deciding between renting an apartment for $2,400 a month or buying a comparable home. Let's say that home costs $450,000. You put 10% down. That's $45,000. Your loan is $405,000. Closing costs, let's say $12,000. Property taxes and insurance, maybe $700 a month. That varies a lot. Maintenance, a common rule of thumb is 1% of the home's value per year. 1% of $450,000 is $4,500 per year, which is $375 per month. No HOA, just to keep it simple. Now, the mortgage payment depends heavily on interest rates, but we don't even need an exact number to prove the point. Because homeowners always compare rent to the mortgage payment, and that's the first mistake. You need to compare rent to the homeowner's true monthly cost. So let's estimate the mortgage, principal, and interest at $2,700 a month. Then add taxes and insurance, $700. Then add maintenance, $375. That's a total monthly homeowner cost of $3,775. Rent is $2,400, so on day one, renting saves $1,375 per month. That's not small. That's $16,500 per year. Now here's where homeowners get mad. They'll say, yeah, but the homeowner's building equity. Okay, true, but you don't build equity equal to your full payment. You build equity equal to the principal portion of your mortgage payment plus price appreciation, minus selling costs, minus repairs you had to do, minus the opportunity cost of cash you locked up. And you can't spend equity without selling or borrowing against it. Meanwhile, the renter has $13.75 extra per month that can be invested immediately. So the real question becomes, does the home's equity growth beat the renter's investing advantage over the time you'll live there? That depends on timeline and discipline. And most people don't have the timeline and they're not disciplined. Now let's talk about the down payment trap. In this example, you put down $45,000 and you paid $12,000 in closing costs. That's $57,000 up front. When you rent, you don't drop $57,000 into a house. You keep it. And if you invest that money, it can grow. Even conservatively, that's a big head start. I'm not saying never buy. I'm saying homeowners hate this math because it forces you to admit that buying has an opportunity cost. If you lock up $57,000 and you also pay $13.75 more per month than renting, you are making a massive bet that the house will outperform what that money could have done elsewhere. That bet can work, but it's not guaranteed, and it's definitely not automatically smarter. This is where the break-even timeline matters. Buying has huge upfront costs. Renting has lower upfront costs. So buying only wins if you stay long enough for the long-term benefits to outrun the upfront hit. That's why the rent versus buy answer is usually a timeline problem. If you move in 2 to 4 years, buying often loses. If you stay 10 plus years, buying often wins. The problem is, most people buy like they'll stay forever, but live like they might move anytime. Job changes, relationships, kids, divorce, career opportunities, burnouts, family stuff, relocations. Life is not stable enough for most people to justify buying as early as they do. And when you sell quickly, the fees eat you alive. You pay closing costs on the way in, you pay for repairs and upgrades. Then you pay realtor commissions on the way out. Even if the home price goes up, you could still be down. Now the biggest pushback is, but rent can go up. Yes, rent can go up. That's the strongest argument for buying. But homeowners act like owning locks your housing costs forever, and that's not true either. Taxes go up, insurance goes up, maintenance goes up, HOA fees go up, and repairs get worse as the house ages. So renters have rent inflation risk. Homeowners have everything inflation risk. Also, if your rent goes up, you can move. If your total cost of owning goes up, you're stuck unless you sell. And selling is expensive, so the real advantage isn't that rent never increases. The advantage is flexibility. Renting buys you options. This is where renting can absolutely destroy buying financially. First, job opportunities. If you can move for a higher paying job, renting makes that easier. People underestimate how much money they lose by staying in one place just because they bought a house. If a new job pays $20,000 more per year but requires moving, renters can say yes faster. Homeowners have to sell, time the market, deal with showings, repairs, and delays. Flexibility is a financial asset. Second, avoiding being house poor. A lot of people buy at the top of what they can afford. Then one repair hits and it's game over. If you rent, you can keep a larger emergency fund and invest more consistently. Third, outsourcing risk. When something breaks in a rental, you call the landlord. When something breaks in a house, you become a project manager with a second job. Time has value, stress has value. And unexpected repairs are basically forced withdrawals from your future. Now let's talk about the hidden truth. Owning concentrates your risk in one asset. Homeowners love saying, my house is an investment. Okay, but understand what you're doing. You are taking a large chunk of your net worth and putting it into one specific property, in one specific neighborhood, in one specific local economy, exposed to one set of risks. That is not diversification, that's concentration. A renter who invests in index funds is spreading risk across thousands of companies. A homeowner is betting heavily on one building. Again, this can work. But the houses always go up crowd forgets that markets can stagnate, drop, or underperform for long periods depending on location. And even if your home goes up in value, you still have to live somewhere. So unless you're downsizing, relocating to a cheaper area, or renting after you sell, the gain is often trapped. It's wealth on paper. Now here's the renter's cheat code, and it's also the biggest warning. Renting is only better if you invest the difference. If you rent and then spend the savings on DoorDash and car payments, you're not winning, you're just comfortable and broke. The winning renter strategy is simple. Rent a place that fits your life. Keep your total housing cost reasonable. Invest the difference between renting and owning automatically. If you do that, renting can be insanely powerful because you're building liquid wealth. Not equity you can't touch, real money. Money that moves with you. Money that can become freedom. And this is why homeowners hate this math. Because it proves building wealth isn't about owning a house. It's about what you do with your cash flow. So when is renting actually better than buying? Here are the common situations. If you'll likely move in the next 3 to 7 years, renting is usually safer. If you're not sure you'll stay, don't pretend you're sure. Buying and selling quickly is one of the easiest ways to light money on fire. If the rent-to-buy gap is huge, renting plus investing can crush. If you're early in your financial life and you don't have a solid emergency fund, stable income, low consumer debt, and investing habits, then buying can become a financial anchor that slows your entire life down. If you live in a high-cost area, the buy math can be brutal. You're paying for status and scarcity, not financial efficiency. And if you value flexibility and low stress, renting can be the smarter choice. Some people just don't want to be responsible for a building. That's not weak, that's smart self-awareness. Now, to be fair, sometimes buying is better. Buying can be great if you plan to stay long-term, like 10 years or more, if the monthly ownership cost is close to rent, if you're financially stable and can handle repairs, if you actually want the lifestyle of ownership, and if you have the discipline to keep investing even while owning. Buying is especially powerful if you use it correctly. Don't overbuy. Keep the payment manageable. Avoid lifestyle inflation. Maintain the property efficiently. And don't treat home equity like an ATM. The worst homeowners are the ones who buy, then immediately start borrowing against it, upgrading everything, and living like the house made them rich. That's how you end up with a $600,000 house and no real wealth. So here's a simple framework to decide without guessing. First, compare the true monthly cost, not just the mortgage. Owning includes mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA if you have it, utility differences, and the opportunity cost of the down payment. Second, be honest about your timeline. If you're not at least 80% sure you'll be there long term, renting is usually safer. Third, decide what you'll do with the difference. If renting is cheaper, you need an automatic investing plan. If buying is cheaper, which can happen, then buying can be the move. Fourth, stress test your life. Could you handle a $7,000 repair, a job loss, a medical bill, or a move without being forced to sell? If not, you're not ready to buy. And that's not an insult, that's reality. Now let's be honest about why people buy even when the math says no. Because buying feels like progress, renting feels like waiting, and most people would rather feel like they're moving forward than actually move forward financially. Homeownership is socially rewarded. Renting is socially judged, so people buy to win a status game and lose the money game. They trade flexibility for a driveway, they trade liquidity for a lawn, they trade investing power for repairs, and then they cope by repeating the same line. Rent is throwing money away. It's not. Rent is paying for shelter and flexibility. And if you invest properly while renting, you can build more wealth than the average homeowner who just blindly buys and hopes for appreciation. So here's the conclusion. The math isn't anti-house, it's anti-delusion. Renting is better than buying in more situations than people want to admit. Not because renting is magical, but because buying is expensive, risky, and full of hidden costs. If you're going to buy, do it for the right reasons. Long timeline, stable finances, manageable payment, willingness to handle responsibility. But if you're renting right now, don't let anyone shame you. If you can keep your costs controlled and invest the difference, you're not behind. You're not throwing money away. You're buying flexibility while quietly building real wealth. And that's the kind of math that makes homeowners mad, because it's true.